How's Ed doing?
That is good. Go. Time. Welcome to the joint work session of the County Commissioners and the County Council. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a short prayer? Heavenly Father, we ask that you give us all wisdom today, Lord, that you watch over these proceedings and that you help us to have a discussion that will benefit us all. And Lord, we pray for our nation and for this county. In Jesus' name, amen.
I'd also like to open the County Council work session as well, and thank you all for coming. The purposes of the work session today are for the Commissioners and Council to speak together about an issue we're having with employee salaries and wages that have been historically too low that we're aware of, and now with everything going on in the country with wages rising quickly, we really are trying to figure out what we're going to do to address that problem. And at this time, the meeting will not be open to the public, but we also won't be making any decisions today. It's just a conversation between the council and the commissioners that you're all very welcome to listen to, and then provide feedback to us by phone or email, and then we'll open up to public input at a different time. Thank you for coming. Thank you. So we, at the last work session with the council, we discussed, Chad, help me remember, we discussed implementing longevity for employees.
Implementing a matrix structure for all employees, not just the road deputies. We also examined part-time pay, and we also looked at a Association of Indiana Counties analysis that Kenan prepared for us. Right, and at that time, each of those things cost money. I think trying to raise part-time salaries was roughly $200,000. The longevity, was it roughly $200,000 also? And then trying to bring individuals up to a more standard wage was very varying depending on how closely we brought people up to wage. Hard to talk and hold down this button and move my papers all at the same time. All right, thank you, Ann. And so we had also discussed whether or not it was time to adjust benefits to try to move money from benefits to wages. And at that time, for the commissioner's benefit, I had been using some old numbers that said that we might be able to get up to $1 million for making some insurance changes, and that was inflated. Chad, do you want to talk about that? Yeah, so I spoke with Josh Estel at the insurance company and ask him to do an analysis on what would be the potential savings if we did a spousal carve-out and a switched to all on the HSA Plan B plan. So in the spousal carve-out, it would be somewhere between a $200,000 to $300,000 savings on the initial. Obviously, that's a moving number. This year, that's based on this year's number. Last year, it would have been a more, 2 years ago, it would have been a much more significant number because our spousal claims were much higher. So that's based on the last 12 months figure. Switching to the Plan B for all employees would be roughly $100,000 to $200,000 in total savings, giving and that is just raw numbers. That doesn't account for what we call becoming smarter consumers. When they go on a high deductible plan, we find that many employees become a smarter consumer when they actually shop for their health care. For example, when I had my shoulder surgery, I could get an MRI at the hospital here at $2,600, or I could have Melissa drive me to Carmel and get it for $450. It was done on the same MRI machine, but the Carmel was a standalone facility versus the hospital, which is a huge facility with huge overhead. So that's what we say in becoming a smarter consumer. So those are numbers just based on raw numbers. They don't account for people taking into account the actual costs.
Did he email that to you?
Yes, I have an email that I sent to.
Send that to all of us, please.
Yes.
So again, just as we're talking out loud, I mean, that 300 to 500,000, it could cover longevity, but at that point we still have low part-time wages and we haven't addressed salaries. Yes, sir.
Hey, push your,
You have to push
Push
your
your
mic button down to talk.
I was trying to remember, does the Plan B cover retirees?
No. Plan B does not cover retirees. Correct, Chad? That's entirely separate.
Well, no, so it depends on what level of retiree. If you're a Medicare retiree, you're on the Humana plan. If you're a pre-Medicare retiree, you are currently on Plan A. If you're retired but aren't old enough to qualify for Medicare, then you're on Plan A, because we don't have any employees that have been here long enough on Plan B yet to retire. We're getting very soon. I mean, we're getting nearer to that in the future, but yes. So Harold, like yourself, you're on the Humana plan because you're Medicare age, so you're on Humana. Yeah, but someone who was retired but younger than 65 would actually be on the Plan A. Does that help?
Yeah.
So I know, Clay, when we were here last time, you said we keep talking about the problem and we don't really have a solution for it. And that's true. Have you had any other thoughts since then?
Not really. And the folks that I've spoke to, I've told them exactly that same thing. And obviously I haven't talked to everybody in the room, but those that I have talked to that are here and some that aren't here, honestly, they completely understand the situation. But obviously they would like something to be done. The one thing that I did mention to those that I did talk to, that I'm liaison for, I did mention the spousal carve-out as a possibility. Some of those items that's already been mentioned. But of course, when I told them, I was using the numbers that we had previously heard, and the savings is not as significant now as it was then. But the main thing, and I'll end with this, as we've looked at our tax revenue, according to Baker and Tilly, we obviously see a flat line of tax revenue. So there's no expectation in the next 3 to 5 years of that increased revenue. And actually studies showed that, and I'm not trying to cast a dark cloud, it's just that studies show, the data shows that we are losing population in Henry County not gaining, which doesn't help the purpose at all. So it actually leaves us with the situation of what do we do? I will use this time to express some of the things that I have heard from the very few people I have spoken to is that they would rather, and again, this is just a minute portion, they would rather things stay the same than lose the benefits they currently have. But at the same time, they also understand that there may be some possibilities of adjustments that need to be made because we obviously do have certain departments that are we are losing staff right now. And some of those departments are vital to government. So,
may I say something?
Before you do, Harold, can I jump in real quick? Can I jump in real quick before you?
I'm sorry.
Can I jump in real quick before you?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to piggyback what Clay said, because I too have talked to several departments, several people in the departments, and they are echoing the same thing. While they understand that the pay is not where it should be, they would prefer not to lose benefits. They see it as if you're taking away my benefits to give me a raise, then you're not really giving me a raise. You're not giving me anything. You're taking something away. You're dropping from Peter to pay Paul. And that's been the consensus. I haven't talked to everybody, but the ones that I've talked to, that's been the consensus as well.
and, oh, you was getting ready to speak, Harold.
No, go ahead.
When Bobby spoke, it reminded me, we do have some departments, and we've already done this in previous council meetings. There are some departments that operate differently than other departments. For an example, the health department. A few years ago, they were seeing an extreme decrease in their budget. So Angela took the bull by the horns. She increased fees, and that helped sustain her department. There's other departments we looked at that are able to make some adjustments within their department, and they were able to increase certain wages or come up with money in other forms other than using general fund. The problem is, I also understand we have some departments that don't have any availability to do anything because they solely operate through general fund. So it's not a perfect solution, but if we come budget time and the decision is do nothing at all, there are some departments, for some of you department heads, if you do have creative solutions, we have been welcoming those creative solutions to try to bolster your department, albeit it's not going to serve everyone. However, you may be able to be creative in your own area and create an avenue that would help the cause.
Go ahead, Harold.
I've had the opportunity to talk to a few people about this, not very many, but some. And being a former county employee myself, I can see where you're coming from as a group of county workers. Like Clay said, we have a problem here of people leaving. We don't want that. I know the sheriff's department, for instance, they've lost some good deputies because they couldn't pay them what they felt like they had to have. And the same way with the workers over here. I don't know about you, but it's a decision that's going to have to be up to you. I know how I feel, but I will say this. I know every day what you're facing. Because, well, particularly because when I was with the sheriff's department, it was awful. We usually were lucky to hire maybe one deputy, and maybe we'd only have 50 apply. Well, now it's not even that because of the problem we have in this country against police officers. I don't want to see that happen here. These guys have out there, every time they go out, they don't know what they're facing. And people have got to realize the danger of this job. I know. I wrestled a guy all over a mobile home who was trying to pull my gun away from me to shoot me. I faced another individual who had a knife and went after me, and I finally got my gun out, or I'd have been in trouble. This is not an easy job, especially nowadays. So I can understand entirely how you feel. I understand how you feel. You've got stress on, a lot of stress. I know that. Some of you are having to work 10-hour days, 4 days a week. Maybe you don't like that, others do. This is not a simple solution, but I want you to know I will do everything in my power to see that we can help the whole county perspective as best we possibly can. At least I will. I know I came from where you're at. I just want to let that be known.
Thank you, Harold.
Yeah, I guess I have a few things to say. Last night, I spent an hour and a half on the phone with a county employee. They make in the neighborhood of $35,000 a year. Their actual money that they have to spend is in the low 20s for a year. And they kept repeating, how can you live on $21,000, $22,000 a year? That's a hard question to answer. These are, as far as I can see, in my 70 years, very unusual times. Just in the last year or two, things have gone up outrageously. Gasoline is up. Lumber is crazy. Fast food, which I eat a lot of, things I used to buy for $5 or $6, it's $9 in a year. So obviously, if you're on a fixed income and you're not making a whole lot of money, things are getting tougher and tougher and tougher. I wish I could say this was all because of COVID and it's going to get better in a few months. I hope it does. Rents are outrageous. You can't buy a house even if you have the money because hardly anything is for sale. If you do have to rent, rents are very high. That's just not here. It's pretty much all over the country. So things are really tough. I really believe the people up here are trying turning over every rock they can to figure out a way to make things better. But like you heard, income for the county is pretty flat, projected for the next several years, if it doesn't get worse. So it's almost an unsolvable problem. There are certain things you can do. I don't think we could get 3 people out there watching here and listening to agree on the best way to do it. So it's tough for these people up here to agree on the best way to do it. It's not an easy problem. I think certainly we have very low-paid people in a lot of areas. One suggestion that was made to me that I don't have the expertise to know how well this would work, but it certainly made sense that as people retired, we try very hard not to replace them and to replace them with modern technology, different software that makes it easier for the people that are here to do their job. Of course, that wouldn't work too well for the Sheriff's Department, but it would work for some other departments. At the same time, cross-training people so that even between departments, so that if your department was slow, you could help out on other departments. It's not something that people really would, maybe some people would like it, other people would hate it, but it would be a way to operate the county on fewer employees. What it really comes down to is how much the taxpayer is willing to pay to get county services, whether it be the Sheriff's Department or any other department here. How much is the taxpayer willing to pay? If we raise taxes, there will be lots of people out there saying, wait a minute, my bills are going up too, and I don't have a county job. I don't have retirement. I don't have this. I don't have that. There's no easy way to solve these problems. I guess everybody up here is going to do the very best they can. I don't know. It'd be really amazing if they could make everybody in this room happy. I hope we can come up with something to make as many people happy as possible. But when you have a finite amount of money and a certain number of people that you're trying to make happy, these jobs that these people have and that we have, I don't think you could say they're ever fun, but on a day like this, they are surely not fun. And it's very hard. If any one of you was up here behind one of these microphones, I think you would be hard-pressed to come up with a solution to these problems that your peers out there would think, hey, that's a great idea. You'd have some people that liked it, some people that hated it. But I really do believe these people are doing the best they can to come up with the best solutions possible. And I hope they are successful.
Susan?
Yes. Go ahead.
I got feedback from about 80% of the department heads, and I think universally, if there's a common theme, it's that, I think Bobby alluded to it, what's the advantage of robbing Peter to pay Paul if there's no net gain in the final analysis? And that's a valid statement. When we met with Baker Tilly a couple months ago, they indicated our assessed valuation for Henry County in 2021 was $35 million less than it was in 2020. So that's the situation that we're dealing with. And they projected when the pandemic began last year that our worst 2 years would be 2021 and 2022 because of the delay in income taxes, and they reiterated that. Though financially, we're in better shape than what they projected a year ago. What I shared at our last meeting was if we took all employees, and I know Ann and I have been working with Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy pretty diligently, and kudos to Ann. Spent a lot of time on this, updating, and department heads too, thank you for feeding back with us. It would cost to bring everybody up to the market value for 2022, and that's what we're looking at for the 2022 budget year. It would cost Henry County $1.22 million. And if you add the figure that we've been told to add approximately 20% to that for fringe benefits such as insurance and longevity and all the Social Security, everything that we pay for, would be 1.46 million, which are monies that we don't have and are not projected to have. To get within 10% of market value, which they provided an analysis for that this year, would be $485,000. But if we actually did 10%, 40% of our employees would get zero raise because we have about 40% of our employees that are within 10% of market value. So what I did was graduated that down so those that are closer to market value would be a lower percentage within market value, such as 5%, 6%, 7%, et cetera. And that came up with a 485. But if you add the 20% for fringes, that's $580,000. That's less than half of what it would take to bring everybody up to market value.
Does everybody get some increase under that
Yes, but
scenario?
those that are very close to market value, and I'll mention the highway department because they received 3%. How much? $3 per hour, much more than 3% 2 years ago. So honestly, according to Wagner, Irwin, Shealy, they are the closest department as a whole to market value right now. They would be getting less of a raise than those that are 20 to 25.7% below market value. They would be given a higher raise. Now, what I've been told, and I believe this to be true, is that it doesn't go over well with some people when someone's getting a 10% raise and someone next door is getting a 2% raise, for example. And that's always going to be human nature, and I understand it. It would take a major deviation from past practice to bring this more in line with market value. What our employees are paid are considerably less than some other counties.
I have a question. Do the departments that are the most underpaid, does that correlate with our departments that are having the most trouble retaining people?
You know, I've not really studied that, but I would say that there has to be a correlation. We're not very competitive in some areas. And, you know, those departments that have come and asked for your committee, Chad, they always go back to market value. And if every employee were to do that, we'd be in a world of hurt, because if every employee did that, we would have to come up with $1.2 million, which we don't have, or $1.46 million, counting the fringe benefits. So as Ed said, these are tough times, and it's tough decision-making. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be, whatever decision's made, it's not going to be popular with everyone. And it's a shame, but it's the way it is. That's the data we have. And no, go ahead.
Looking at these, I know you did the calculations for market value 10%. Have we looked at doing anything? I know the city's doing 12% over 3 years, so they're doing 3% next year, 4% next year, and 5% the next year. Have we looked at any of those lower percentages?
We did last year, and last year it turned out that we had some pretty outdated figures through Wagner, Irwin, Shealy. That came to our attention when we got the latest market analysis from them about 3-4 weeks ago. So that's what Ann and I have been working with Addie and others at Wagner, Irwin, Shealy. No, we've not. We've not looked at that, but again, 2022 is expected to be perhaps our leanest year as far as income and revenues. So to do that, we're sticking our neck out with some unknowns, but I think that's the only way we would be able to achieve that, is to spread it out over years. So I can see why the city's doing that. And we're taking a gamble because we don't know what the revenues are going to be in 2022 or 2023. According to Baker Tilly, 2023 looks like it's going to turn around, and their projections, which, you know, are based on their experience and market analysis and some equations that they use at the national and state level, are normally right on, but it looks like next year is going to be another lean year, and 2022 we're going to see a turnaround. But as someone alluded to, we can't predict what the national scene is going to be, because we just experienced the highest inflation rate nationally in 13 years this last quarter. So if that persists, there's no way we can keep up with that, because our revenues are not keeping up anywhere close to the inflation rate. And the last time we had double-digit inflation rate was 1980, 1979, 80, 81. And I remember getting a 14% raise. Yay. The inflation rate was 16%, so we just lost. So we don't have projected revenues to increase at the level that inflation's increasing. So it's going to be tough.
Thank you, Ken and Chad.
I want to piggyback on a few comments. I think Ed made a great comment about his fast food. Unfortunately, unlike McDonald's, we don't have a Big Mac to raise the price. So that's where the revenue makes it very tough. And I know Kenan has poured a ton of work into this spreadsheet, but honestly, I think it was outdated before it even came out. I mean, if you look at the increases in income across the board have shifted so much in the past 3 to 6 months, it's incredible. The sheriff's department, the road deputies, there's not a guy sitting over here who couldn't leave and get $10 to $20 to $30,000 more to go to work for IMPD, state police, somewhere else. You look on here, they're only a few $1,000s under the average, but I don't think that's necessarily the average anymore. There's not a Comet 3 in the building that couldn't go to Boar's Head right now or go to Draper right now and make nearly $9,000 more a year to work at Draper with virtually identical benefits minus the perf. So these numbers are, I think it's much worse than these numbers even show, is my fear. You know, we just last month addressed the 911. Butch Baker came to us and asked us to increase 911 dispatchers, which we all want people to be there when we dial 911. Melissa and I were in Indianapolis this week, and White Castle is hiring for the exact same rate part-time that we just put a 911 dispatcher in to deal with life and death situations on our end and on these guys' ends. So it's a serious issue, and everybody else is right. I am so open to any thoughts or comments, but I don't know I don't know what the solution is, but I know we've got to try to figure out something, because this issue has gone on for a long time. And employees, it was in the past, it was much more heavily benefit bound. For all the Plan A employees, all those post-2010 employees, the benefits do add up a lot more. But for all those now, we don't have that incentive to hire someone. We can't give them the better reimbursements, the better insurance, the better sick pay. We don't have all those incentives. So we've got to look at something different. And so that's the challenge we're up against right now is, several department heads have had openings and they get 0 applications. I'm not sure how many COs are open right now full-time. I think I'd heard 5 at the last time, but you may have hired 1 or 2 and you got like 1 application. I hear of, it's a challenge that we have to find a solution for. And unfortunately, I just don't know that there's a great answer. That's the problem, because well, God bless the ones we have and the guys and ladies that are standing over there doing that job, but they make $16 an hour full-time, $14 an hour $13 an hour, $13 an hour part-time. They could go to Draper and make $6 more an hour to work on a line instead of getting bit, kicked, cussed, and everything else all day long like they do. So we are extremely fortunate that we have the solid core of employees we do, including every single one of you in this room. Our problem is figuring out how we move forward and how we don't lose you.
Right.
Because we don't want to lose you. You're the backbone of this building and this community, and if we start losing everybody, we lose a lot. So we have to make sure that we don't lose that person to Draper or lose you to Draper, because you can walk out there and make $6,000, $8,000 more to do this to a similar type job. So
I think the motivation for this meeting is that we're not really sure that the status quo is an option anymore. Even though it feels comfortable, we're very afraid that we're not going to be able to retain, we're not going to be able to hire. So even though we're not sure what the answer is.
Susan,
Yes, sir.
I feel that we can give a raise. It's just not going to be as significant as we need to and want to. there are monies to give a raise. The question is, do we look at the part-time? Do we look at longevity? Do we look at the things that are in the personnel manual? Do we look solely at salaries and fringe benefits? Do we keep the fringe benefits as they are? Do we modify them? I mean, when Chad gave the savings on everyone having to do the spousal carve-out, which most entities in Henry County have opted to do that because, for example, in the hospital and, correct me,
And the school system.
in the school system, went to spousal carve-out, we had several spouses join us because we were one of the few entities that still did not have the spousal carve-out. So that took a little bit of a hit to our insurance. Numerous accounts in the commissioner's funds are in the red because of unexpected significant expenses this year. And that's always going to happen. But I was thinking that everyone going to Plan B and requiring a spousal carve-out, I knew Chad was investigating that, was going to be a higher figure.
Yeah, we
I was thinking, given what we were talking, estimated a couple years ago, it'd be in the 700,000 to 800,000 category easily. And he said 300,000 to 500,000. That would barely
two to
give.
three.
Yeah.
2 to 3 for the spousal carve-out.
Yeah.
So what changed in that was when the county changed network and we saved a significant amount of money by doing that. That savings also correlated down to doing the spousal carve-out. So that's.
So it's a good sign that the changes were effective.
It was.
That's great.
Because our insurance fund is as healthy as it has been in a decade.
Right.
So it was a very good thing, but that's why that number was reduced.
My hope was that if we did the spousal carve-out, we would have, significant monies to turn back into raises, so.
Well, if we hadn't made the change 2 years ago and the insurance, we ended the contract year, which is kind of cockeyed. It's June 1st through May 31st. We would have been roughly $500,000 in the red this year, where we ended up 200,000, which is not significant given how much that insurance fund is. But if we hadn't made the change, we would be talking in the red, and what we did 2 years ago, asking departments if they could give up 2-3% of their budget. So in hindsight, which is always 20/20, it was a good move financially to keep us solvent so we can continue meeting payroll, et cetera. But it is going to be a tight year. And COVID is partially responsible for that because we had decreased revenues as a result of things closing and shutting down for a period of time. So, but everyone's dealing with that nationwide. It's just that our assessed valuation, and one thing I didn't mention, our tax rate is in the 45th percentile of what we tax our citizens. In other words, about 55% of the counties tax more than Henry County, and about 45% tax less. So we're in the middle. We're in the middle quartile. So it's we don't overtax. Baker Tilly says we need to tax more. We're sensitive to not doing that because our citizens, I think, are probably taxed enough. And if you were to ask them, I bet they would agree.
And then compared to average wages then across the state, we would be lower. So Harold wanted to add something.
Madam President, if you would permit me, I would like a couple of the office heads, only a couple, because we'd be in here all day if everybody said anything. I'm sure some of them have talked to their help. Could you give us some ideas on what you came up with? Is somebody willing to speak up? If,
What I'd like to know is what the federal government, the $9.2 million, can be used for. We were given information originally what it could be used for, and then we've been told that that's not quite right, it's wrong. Secondly, if there was in fact $700,000 left over from the original federal money that was given and is still being held on to. And then when we start talking about what's available out there, and the state announces today that they're $5 billion
Well, Rick, I'm going to interrupt you. First off, calm down a little bit. There's not a person up. Yes, you are. Calm down, please. Okay? There's not a person up here that doesn't think everybody in this room needs a raise. The problem is where do we get the revenue? One thing about the federal money, it can be used for giving a bonus type scenario, but that's questionable at this point. We're still waiting on Umball to figure out that piece of the pie. We can never use that to pay salaries because we don't have any guarantee that that money will be back tomorrow. I don't anticipate the federal government sending us any more money. So we can't utilize that money to pay salaries because there's no, what are we going to do in 2 years when that money's gone? And you got to look at these officers and say, hey, I got to cut your pay because the money ain't there no more. So that's when.
I can answer that. There's essential payment or essential worker payment that could be used for those who worked first line with the public during COVID, but it's a one-time stipend. It's not something that we can put in the budget. And one of the things that they've advised us, the Treasury's advised us and Baker Tilly has advised us, is don't make any long-term commitments using the federal money that you can't continue over years. So he is correct with that, but there can be, for those essential employees, and I give a category and definition of what those are, could be given a stipend retroactively to the beginning of COVID back in January of 2020. And that's $9.3 million for everything. And that essential worker part is just a piece of that pie. We've said it previous. Yeah, it's maximum of $25,000. It gives a amount per hour, $13 per hour, $25,000. Now, if we did that with everybody that continued to work, not at home, but in person with the public, one-on-one, that would use up a big chunk of that $9.3 million. We anticipate, when we open this up to the public, of getting at least 35 to 40 million requests, legitimate requests that we'll have to prioritize. Well, understood, and you probably should. But when we get 40 million in, and we have 9.3 to spend over the next 3 years, it could potentially go very, very quickly. And I have a feeling most of that $40 million that we anticipate requests are mostly legitimate requests. They're not fancy or pie in the sky. They're probably very legitimate requests coming throughout Henry County. But yes, there is a piece that can be for essential worker, kind of bonus pay, but it's one time only. And we have to substantiate anything that's long-term. And given our budget projections, like I said, next year looks extremely lean. So we have to be careful that we don't overcommit ourselves. Yeah.
again, like Kenan said on his sheet, if we went along with it, it'd be $1.4 million additional. And there's no way to find that. Right now, out of our county budget, around 80% of the county budget goes to people and benefits. Very little of our county budget goes to actual brick and mortar, and a lot of that 20% that's left over goes to utilities and things like that. So it's not, there's not, every department in head here knows there's not a huge fluff in any budget in this county. It's where they're already cut to the bare bones. And so it's trying to, while we're here, is trying to get creative and find where we can find some piece of that $1.4 million.
So I think that the essential worker piece is something that should definitely be submitted as a proposal when we start looking at requests for the 9 million. But it's the ongoing that we still need creative solutions for. Because we've said the same thing. We get this.
His father arrests working when he's lived and paid his taxes and does what he does.
I
It's our
understand.
way of honoring that individual, and I stuck with it. And I've been asked, a lot of guys want to say, why don't you charge for funeral escorts, because funeral homes supposedly charge. I've not checked, I've asked and got a lot of runaround. But I don't want to do that. I mean, it's the last honor we can pay them. And then for alarms, yeah, I'm all for it. If we get the second alarm and it's false, $25. Third time, $50.
Yeah.
But do we really want to do that? And then with law enforcement and the way we're treated today, the way we're looked at today, do we want to be adding to that fire? I mean, if you look at these guys, every one of them committed for civil service. We know our calling. We know what we do. And we're not asking for anything more than it's rough to be third guy on the totem pole when you hear, yeah, well, we could give you a raise, Rick, but you got a jail. Give us a raise because we've got a jail. Every time we've had people act up in there, guess who goes to that? Guess who goes in and assists the jailers with that? These guys right here. They walk in the middle of the fights. But it's tough when you're third. When you've got twice as much cover and you've got that much more responsibility. Because I know $25 million for a jail is a lot of money. But I can also tell you that in the arguments that we've had in years past, it would have been a lot cheaper if they'd have listened to us then, as opposed to now.
Amen.
We all agree with that.
Well, I think we all agree with everything you just said.
Again, it's just, I take it seriously because I've always said, and I've preached for as long as I've been here, the individual at the top, he forgets what it's like to be at the bottom and doesn't need to be at the top. So I can relate to every one of their concerns. I hear them. They don't fall on deaf ears. And again, that's why when you look at my budget this year, it reflects everything that was suggested from that study. Folks, I'm sorry. I know you just want to hear about Sheriff Mark Foley, but the rest of you have the floor.
I have a question first for Rick. Did you say you lost a road deputy this morning or a correction officer?
Secretary to Drake.
You lost a secretary.
I'm going to jump in, gather my thoughts here. So everyone in the room, like, we see the problems, and there's various solutions as far as if we do something. Now, again, we're talking, $1 million plus to do the whole. That seems to be, and again, I'm rehearsing what I've heard so far, so I'm asking to be corrected or confirmed. It seems to be that the obvious point is we can't do it all. So a possible solution to present as we work toward budget time is kind of analyzing what Kenan did here, looking at maybe the departments that we are losing staff in first, seeing what we can do to shore that up a little bit, and then kind of strategically as we go, move over the next few years to kind of shore up various departments as we go, because the obvious is we can't do it all. So what we have to analyze is what can we do? The concern I have of doing nothing at all, which if that's what employees want, then that, okay. But the concern with doing nothing at all is the future. Will we have trouble replacing people? So anyways, to get to the point, maybe I'll speak a little faster. Maybe look at where are we losing people? Start shoring that up, shoring up those leaks, if you will, in the ship first. The other thing that I want to as quick as possible address, because maybe it's not on everybody's mind at all, but what happened to Lowit tax, right? Where we taxed the community for public safety. Well, what ended up happening with that actually has nothing to do with anyone on this council except for me and Harold, because we were there when something that was detrimental to the county took place. And in that particular vote, Harold abstained because he was not at the budget hearings. I voted no. I wasn't at the budget hearings, but I knew what was taking place, and I felt like it would hurt our county. And then you add some of the things that we've been through the past couple of years, and it extremely hurt our county. But what we ended up doing through the public safety Lowit tax, we have been bringing in about $1 million+ a year. And that the original intention was to help build up and bolster public safety. If it was used properly and for its intended purposes, and I'm going to back up and define that in just a second. Its intended purposes, we may not have the problems we have in the sheriff department right now. What I mean by intended purposes, you say, well, it can only go toward public safety. It did only go to public safety. But what happened a couple years ago was there was a political play of shuffling that took place. So because the general fund was projected to go in the hole up to about, I think it was $1 million to $2 million in 2020. If some of you remember years ago where I kept preaching, we need a financial plan, we need a financial plan. Because we kept going in the hole year after year after year, but there was some strategic shuffling happening behind the scenes that all of a sudden everybody's being told everything's okay. Well, it wasn't okay. We were going in the hole. So what happened when no other solution could take place is the previous decision, I'll put it that way, the previous decision was to take that Lowit money, about $1 million, carve it out of general fund, so now we're balanced. But the problem is they took the Lowit and placed it in the sheriff's department for day-to-day operations. So the sheriff's department was normally operating day-to-day, and then we had Lowit. Well, now we just took Lowit, and now the sheriff department operates off of Lowit in their day-to-day function, and the general fund was spent to balance the ship. So now we're no better off because the sinking ship wasn't addressed properly when it should have been. But now, over the past couple of years, the problem has been addressed and some hard decisions have been made, and we've balanced the ship, but now we're right back to having a big, big problem again with no obvious solutions. Now, while I'm going ahead and talking, I am for figuring out what we can do for some bonuses and things, because we got to try to do what we can do. But the obvious, and I think everybody in the room understands, that's temporary money, right? We get that. So we have a problem. We want to solve it. We can't solve the whole problem at once. So what do? Just as the saying goes, and not to be corny, but the only way to eat an elephant's one bite at a time. So we start where the biggest leak is, and we work our way from there, knowing that we can't make everybody happy, knowing that some of you in here are going to be upset. I don't know, and if there is a better solution.
Clay,
let us know.
Go ahead.
I would only like to inquire, and make sure I'm remembering this correctly, but part of that shift to the general fund was that they gave an across-the-board raise to all employees. And that's one of the reasons why it's very difficult to dial that money back out of that, low it, because that added to the general fund that they gave an across-the-board raise to all employees when they did that. So it's not like we can easily shift that right back.
Exactly. Well, and talking to someone I was talking to last night about it, that was exactly what I told him. Now it's kind of, the cement has settled. The cement has hardened. So now it's not, we can't just shift it back over because Henry County now operates day to day as is. So it's very hard to put that back. So it kind of is what it is. And many of you recall, me being the thorn in the side because we kept giving raises. The problem was when the council would meet, because I don't remember having big meetings like this with employees before. But when we would meet, we kept hearing we were going in the hole and things were bad and we didn't have enough money. And then at budget time, they would give everybody a $1,000 across the board raise. Well, that increased our budget by about $200,000. And that happened a few different times. And one of my first budget sessions, this is how Henry County used to operate. One of my first budget sessions, I spoke up, and of course I was the thorn in the side. I was the young rookie that knew everything, right? But I said, this doesn't make sense. You're saying we don't have any money, but you're adding permanent expenses. And someone looked at me, and this is what they did. They go, we don't have to worry about that. We just have to worry about this year. That's how Henry County has operated for decades. Let's just worry about this year. And my statement was this: unless government operates beyond some level of common sense, that makes no sense to me. Because we're saying we don't have the money, but we're adding permanent expenses. So why we are at this inflection today is not just COVID, right? I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing that excuse, though you all know it did play a role. Why we are here today is because hard decisions weren't made in the past, because everybody on the council was too afraid of the employees. We were going in the hole, but you were being told it was okay. It was not okay. And so the ship has balanced, but now we're in kind of a bad position. I feel great about you guys being here. I don't know how anybody else feels, but this is one of the first times in my now almost 9 years that I feel like all of us are coming together, seeing the problem as it is. You're being presented the truth. And why I'm excited about that is because I feel like maybe we can come up with a solution to get us started in a better direction so that in 20 years from now, we don't have big gaping holes in our local government.
Thank you, Clay. One of the things when you were talking and you said, we should focus on plugging up the holes, and I see value in that. I'm afraid if we do that, a risk would be that a big hole could appear that we didn't know was there before. So what if Jody decides to leave and we thought her department was fine and she leaves and now we have a huge hole we didn't plan on and we already used the money less strategically. So that was just one thought I wanted to put out there, so we could start with the holes we see now. My guess is other holes will appear. So that's just one comment. The other one is, Ken, and you said we have some money to do something without making any changes to insurance. Is that what you said?
Yes, just given what the projections are from Baker Tilly when we met with them a month or two ago.
Did you have a dollar figure that you were? Okay.
No, because I wanted to hear what came out of today's discussion.
I do too.
It's under 200,000.
I think so too.
That probably is reasonable. I just wanted to update. I enjoyed the historical that I was not aware of from Clay. This year, we're projected to get 1.3 from the safety lit, which is good, but I did not know that's what was basically financing the sheriff's department, because
What did you say? Get 1.3 from what?
1.3 from the safety lit.
From the safety lit.
According to DLGF, that's the projection for 2021. But I was not aware of the history, and I was not aware that it evolved from what it was intentionally sold as and meant for.
That guy right there argued that Smith building, I said right by that that's exactly what would happen to safety. And it did. And so we're now funded by safety lit in everything that we've received in our budget before. Our regular budget.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I argued it there, here, and everywhere, and was assured that would never happen. But the very first budget, they took half of it. The second budget, they took the rest, all but like 20,000.
My only asterisk, because I'm trying to find optimism in this whole discussion, is thank God that we finally passed something to get a new jail, because that was kicked down the road. 10 years that was kicked down the road.
But the serious part of that, what really makes just sticks in my craw is it took a federal lawsuit to get it. Now, is that the common practice across the state? Usually. But we didn't have to go that route. Bush was pushing to get the juvenile detention center. And now we hear that they're not paying enough money out there to take care of what needs to be fixed.
It's a very poor lease contract, and so is Ivy Tech's.
We could have been out there and been fixed and not looked at the federal lawsuit. But now we move to today and it's 25 million and oh what? That's our fault too.
That was a very costly mistake. Foresight was not seen 10 years ago, and
Yeah, it did. But again, these other department heads, but I'm sure will have something to say because it's a sad state of affairs. I can't speak for their departments, but I can tell you when I have to look at these guys and they're third on that ladder, it's tough. And I don't beg them to stay if they want to go. Because I understand raising a family. And I understand trying to run a household. So I don't beg them to stay. Do I want them to stay? Absolutely. But if they want to go for better money, I'm all for it. Because I understand where they're coming from.
I don't know of anybody in the country that really would want to be in the shoes of law enforcement, given today's climate or the climate over the last year. I certainly would not do.
And that is when I had cousins when they stepped off the plane in Indianapolis in their uniforms during the Vietnam War, who were spit on, called baby killers, and were not recognized as true veterans. But that has turned. They are recognized today, and they should have been then. 58,000 individuals died. But move forward, they're now recognized. And I think if law enforcement does the same thing, if we hold the line, continue to do our best, be professional, and do the job as best we can, that too will change. But right now, we're in the furnace, so we're being tested.
So I would only comment to Clay's plugging by department theory. The difficulty in that is we pay by class. And so there's a lot of crossover between departments. So we got to keep that in mind. Since this county is elected to pay by class, we have a lot of similar positions in multiple departments. So like a Comet 3 is a very common position in the county that's in nearly every single department we have. And I think on Kinman's list, it's towards the top. But, I mean, that's one of the lower pays in the county, the $30,529. But, you know, that's the only difficulty in trying to address that situation. So maybe we either have to discuss the possibility of changing the class pay system, or instead of by department, we go by position, by class. Just a thought.
I had been kind of targeting a 90-minute meeting, and Harold suggested hearing input from department heads. Are we ready to do that now, or do you want to wait until another meeting to do that? We've talked about several things, many things now.
I guess here's my only thought is we have budget sessions staring us down within the next few weeks. So I thought, my understanding was this meeting was to try to understand what the commissioners were interested in considering, because we're going to need to know within the next few, when's our budget session? First week of August, we're going to need to know what we can and cannot do as a council with the budget. So I think
The original intent was just for the commissioners and council to speak together. And we are really interested in the commissioner's opinion on the things they control as far as setting benefits, as we're trying to figure out what money we have available to increase wages with. So I'll put you three in the hot seat.
Just one real quick comment. One thing that we mentioned and discussed at the last meeting we held in here a few weeks ago was the whole idea of, I guess, some call it merit pay, but evaluations. And I don't want to open that up today because that could be a 90-minute session just to be kicked off. I don't know if that's done in any department. In my previous job, that was a big thing. I spent unbelievable number of hours evaluating teachers, and the state required us to do each teacher 5 times a year, go into their classroom, and it got to be pretty ridiculous because that's all we could do. But I don't know if that's something that any department would like to chair in the future, maybe not here today, because I said that would open up a huge can of worms, and I'm not sure we could tackle that plus the other things we talked about. But I just wanted to bring it up. That was discussed at the last meeting, and I'm not suggesting that we tackle that today.
Thank you, Kenan. And we did discuss that. We discussed the possibility of getting short-term disability rather than sick pay. We discussed anything else. We talked about job sharing, and I think Ed Tarantino mentioned that. We've been trying to brainstorm any possible options. So, and if I were to talk to the department heads, and that's something that we're going to be doing over the next week or two to try to meet with department heads, some departments are clearly operating short. I don't know if any departments are not. Is there a possibility for a department to let go of one person, or 2 departments to let go of a person and share a person? And those are questions we can't really answer, but those are the questions we need answers to as we are looking to raise pay for our employees. If we have anyone on payroll that isn't essential, then we could raise wages with that. So we're open to any suggestion, and our entire intent is to try to raise wages to closer to what they should be. We're not trying to hurt anyone. We're trying to do the right thing. So as we talk to department heads over the next week or two, we're really wanting some honest feedback from everybody. But commissioners, do you have any feedback for us before we go into budget?
I guess I would say something that I said earlier. It is very difficult to lay people off. There's loyalty among county employees. Nobody wants to see a friend of theirs be laid off. I wouldn't call for laying people off necessarily, but as people retire, I think, or leave to take another job, I think we need to work together to try to figure out ways to get their work done without hiring a replacement. That's not always going to be possible. Some people, you just have to replace them and hire another person. But I would think we could get 6 to 8 people and cross-train other people and departments working together. Every time someone leaves, we try to figure out how to get that person's work done without hiring a new person. If we're successful in doing that over the next couple of years, we might be able to get 8 people's salaries. That's $400,000 to $500,000 a year that we're not paying out and that we can give to the remaining employees. Everything else we've got as an option means that, I mean, you ask the commissioners, where we're going to get the money to give raises. It is an extremely difficult question to answer because any given day, we can get a bill for $50,000 for some piece of equipment that broke down in a building that we didn't budget for. And then we have to find $50,000. It happens a lot more often than you would think. So I don't have an answer, but I would think that that is certainly a strategy that we should look for. The other strategy that we should, and I'm not a techie person, okay, but.
Really? Really, you're not?
Really not.
Really?
No. I know how to turn it on. I can text. If anybody wants to text me, I can answer you with the phone. That's about it. But I know that technology is moving rapidly all the time. And if department heads know of a way where we can purchase technology to replace people, we all see it. It's all coming. They can build cars now with all machines and no people. There's no people involved. It's all welding machines and computers and robots, and they move down. Well, the fewer people we have, the more money we can give to the people that we need. So if there are software programs and things where we can replace people with outside sources, even if it costs $100,000 for a machine, that's only 2 years of a person's salary. After that, we're making money. So I don't have solutions, like I said earlier. This is tough, and it could get worse before it gets better. But
Yes, I can tell you what happens when you work 14 people less than you need in jail. You end up with individuals who work overtime to the point they have up to 600 hours of downtime. People cannot take their vacations when they like. They can't take their holidays off, and they work over and still can't burn up the contract. Amen.
Yeah, that's a whole nother ball of wax that we haven't even addressed. Yeah, you're exactly right. I need to apologize, ask everyone if you'd excuse me. I've got to get back to work at my other job. But feel free to call me, email me, whatever, if you have a question or an idea. So, thank you.
One brief comment. Could I make it? I don't know if, how many of you are aware of this. Some of you may be. Do you remember when our wonderful Governor Daniels came in with this tax plan back around, I think it was a 2010 bill that he took to legislature and it passed? Does anybody remember that? There was 3 classes. Started out, farmers weren't included, but eventually they were. It started out, I think, businesses, people like us, and farmers. And each step had a certain amount that was cut from those people's income taxes. Well, I found this out from a former county auditor. They were cutting us, and probably other counties, I say they, the state was cutting us anywhere from $900,000 to $1 million a year on our budget. And probably a lot of you didn't know that. We've always had problems since then. Every single year, and I don't know if they're still doing it or not. I wish Debbie was here, but she had to be out on something pretty serious. And I would like to know if we're still paying out that. It's ridiculous.
Harold, I think it's grown to over 1.5 million at this point.
Oh, hell. Well, that's typical, state politics. But a lot of people wonder, well, how come they never have any money? Well, there's a prime example. The little guy always comes out last, and that's us, then you. But I just thought some of you might like to know that. I won't say the word, it burns me.
So from the commissioners, would you like us to try to target wages without looking at modifying benefits? Is that,
I have gone around and talking to several employees, and they are actually, they've been giving me ideas of different things to look at, but I don't think that anything can be implemented by time budget. I mean, this is probably a discussion that should have taken place in January or February, not July before August, but I've been getting a lot of feedback, but I don't think it can be anything done before budget time.
is it the right time to share some of those ideas? Okay.
No, still working on them. Steve, do you have anything to add?
Well, the only thing I thought was when we were talking about going from Plan A to Plan B, the figure we got from Josh was between 80 and 90,000. So when we're talking about cutting insurance, I didn't see we're eliminating Plan A was really that big of a help to anybody. I agree with what everybody else has said. So far, what I've heard is raises are nice and we all want them. I don't think there's a person in here that doesn't. But I think most everybody would like to keep the benefits they have as opposed to getting a raise. Most accounting employees know where their money's at, know what they get, and they have these jobs. A lot of it's because of the convenience of working local, close to home. I think there's a lot of departments that are way underpaid, and if we could figure out a way to do this, we'd all be heroes. I don't have the magic bullet. I wish I did. But trying to get this figured out, we're going to need all your guys' help because this is a tough decision for all of us to make. And there is no magic, easy solution. And us trying to figure it out without making everybody mad, it's trying to help the majority. And we don't want to lose you guys. It's been said several times this afternoon, you're the backbone of the county. And if we don't have you, I know I count on an awful lot of you because you know your jobs, you know how to do them, and you do them well. And if we lose you, we're going to be screwed. But we need input from all of you on what do we do to keep you here and to keep you happy and still be able to maintain the county the way we need to maintain it. And that's getting harder to do every day because it's just like Ed said, we have bills that come up that hit us in the face that we're not expecting. There are things that have been let go for decades, and the jail was a prime example, just like the sheriff alluded. It could have been taken care of years ago. I said it when I was campaigning that, you know, that was a can we kicked down the road forever and ever. And we finally kicked it so far up against the curb we couldn't get over it anymore, and we were mandated to do something. And look what it cost us. And we're paying for these things now. You can only sit there and do that for so long, and then it bites you in the backside, and that's where we're at now. So any help that you guys can give us to figure out what are solutions that you guys can live with would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Steve. So I can't emphasize enough that we're definitely not trying to reduce the amount of money that we're using to compensate employees. It's possibly shifting it or trying to find money to increase it is the purpose of what we're doing. I would invite all of you, our email addresses are online if you have any suggestion, any brainstorming, just your opinion about what you would prefer, where you see the biggest problems, any type of input that you have. You can blast all of us or one of us, it doesn't matter. Chad, do you have any other closing comments?
No, I'll just echo basically everything that's said, and just, you know, I think the bottom line is we only have so much money, and so we're in a figuring out a shift phase because we don't see a way of increasing the revenue. Our revenue is going to remain very flat from everything we've seen. We've passed all the taxes we can at this point, and I don't see that being an option. So it's, like I said, it's getting creative and just shifting monies, not growing monies. Unless there is a fee or something your department's currently not charging that you could look at. I know several departments have fee available structures, but I think most of them are already utilizing that. So, I mean, it's just, you know, this is a big problem with no easy solution, and we're all really want to try to help because we want to keep everybody we've got, and this year we've lost several, and we have the threat of losing several more that I hear on a regular basis from department heads. And honestly, I can't blame you. I'm in the same boat as Rick. If you can drive 2 minutes south of town and make $6,000, $8,000 more a year, I wish I could offer you that same amount of money here, but I don't know how to do it. You know, I would hate to see somebody go for that. So I'd love to, we're really trying to come up with a solution that we can do something to incentivize our employees to stay. But I really don't think I'm going to be able to match Draper's pay either.
Does anyone else have a closing comment? Okay. Thank you all for coming. And I'll close the work session for the council. And Ed?
Motion to adjourn, Ed.
Do I have a motion to close from the commissioners?
So moved.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.
Hey, I better take this tape off here.